Hi guys. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight. Today's video is going to be a reading of Chicken Soup for the Pet Lover Soul. As a lot of you might know, last month I lost my dog. Sorry. I lost my family dog that we had for about 10 years. She was 18 years old. Man, I told myself I wasn't gonna cry. She was 18 years old. Her name was Freckles. She was the best dog in the world. And I miss her a lot. Oh my gosh, I should have put some Kleenex next to me. So, I know that I have been very absent this past month, and that is why. Thank you to everyone who has sent me kind words. I had posted about what's been going on, and you guys have just been so understanding and wonderful, and I appreciate it. So this video is going to be dedicated to her, and I'm going to be reading specifically the chapter about mourning and losing a pet. I might need to take a few breaks to collect myself, but I'm going to do it because I need to hear these stories right now, especially. So, if you like this video, please let me know, and I will try to read more of it. I also have decided that for the time being, I'm going to upload once a week instead of twice a week. I will be uploading on Saturday nights, so keep an eye out for future videos from me. I'm going to light my candle. This one is a candle that smells like the beach. It's just kind of smells like the ocean. So I'm gonna light that. I'm gonna take a sip of my water, and we will begin. Saying goodbye. Love knows not its own depth with until the hour of separation. And this has a little cartoon. It says, "Dad, did you check on the little raccoon this morning?" "Yes, Calvin. I'm afraid he died." "Well, I'm sorry too, kiddo, but he didn't have much of a chance." And he's still crying. And the dad says, "At least he died warm and safe, Calvin. We did all we could, but now he's gone. And Calvin said, "Sniff. I know. I'm crying because out there he's gone, but he's not gone inside me." The price of love. If only I can keep the kids from naming him, that would do the trick. No family needs 2 dogs, I began dogmatically, and so I invoked the Bauer anonymity rule, parentheses, bar, which prohibits the naming of any animal not on the endangered species list. That includes anything that walks or squawks, sings or swims, hops, crawls, flies, or yodels, because at our place, a pet named is a pet claimed. But we gotta call him something, our 4 children protested. All right, then, call him Dog X, I suggested. They frowned, but I thought it the perfect handle for something I hoped would float away like a generic soap powder. My no-name strategy proved a dismal failure, however. Long before the pup was weaned, the kids secretly began calling him Scrampy. And before I knew it, he had become as much a fixture as the fireplace, and just as immovable. All of this could have been avoided, I fumed, if Andy, a neighborhood mutt, had only stayed on his side of the street. But at age 14, the scruffy, arithmetic mongrel hobbled into our yard for a tete-a-tete with the blue-blooded schnauzer. Baroness Heidi of Princeton on her AKC papers, who was a 10-year-old maid. Before one could say safe sex, we had a miracle of Sarah and Abraham proportions. We were unaware that Andy had left his calling card until the middle of one night during our spring vacation in Florida. I thought the moaning noise was the ocean, but investigation revealed it was coming from Heidi, whom Shirley, my wife, pronounced in labor. I thought she was getting fat, I mumbled sleepily. When morning brought no relief or delivery, we found a vet who informed us that a big pup was blocking the birth canal, which could be fatal to Heidi. We wrung our hands for the rest of the day, phoning every couple of hours for an update. Not until evening was our dog pronounced out of danger. She was carrying 3, the doctor reported, but only 1 survived. The kids took one look at the male pup, a ragamuffin ball of string, red string, brown string, black string, tan string, gray string, and exclaimed, "Andy, he looks just like Andy." And there was no mistaking the father. Heidi's only genetic contribution seemed to be his schnauzer beard. Otherwise, he was an eclectic mix of terrier, collie, beagle, setter, and stewed baker. "Have you ever seen anything so homely?" I asked Shirley. "He's adorable," she answered admiringly. Too admiringly. "I only hope someone else thinks so. His days with us are numbered, but I might as well have saved my breath." By the time Dog X reached 10 weeks, our kids were more attached to him than branches to a boat's bottom. I tried to ignore him. "Look at how good he is catching a ball, Dad," Christopher pointed out. I grunted noncommittally. And when Andy's Frawley performed his tricks, sit, fetch, roll over, play dead, and the kids touted his smarts, I hid behind a newspaper. One thing I could not deny, he had the ears of a watchdog, detecting every sound that came from the driveway or yard. Heidi, his aging mother, heard nothing but his barking, which interrupted her frequent naps. He, on the other hand, was in perpetual motion. When the kids went off on their bikes, or I put on my jogging shoes, he wanted to go along. If left behind, he chased squirrels. Occasionally, by now, I slipped and called him Scrampy. Then in the fall, after 6 months of family nurture and adoration, Scampy suffered a setback. Squealing brakes announced that he had chased one too many squirrels into the street. The accident fractured his left hind leg, which the vet put into a splint. We were all relieved to hear his prognosis, a complete recovery, but then a week later, the second shoe dropped. Gangrene, Shirley told me one evening. The vet says amputate or he'll have to be put to sleep. I slumped down in a chair. There's little choice, I said. It's not fair to make an active dog like Scampy struggle along on 3 legs the rest of his life. Suddenly, the kids who had been eavesdropping flew into the room. They don't kill a person who has a bad leg, Steve and Lorraine argued. Buying time, I told them. We'll decide tomorrow. After the kids were in bed, Shirley and I talked. It will be hard for them to give up Scampy, she sympathized. Especially Christopher, I replied. I was about his age when I lost Queenie. Then I told her about my favorite dog, a statuesque white Spritz, whose fluffy coat rolled like ocean waves when she ran. But Queenie developed a crippling problem with her back legs, and finally my dad said she would have to be put down. But she can get well, I pleaded. I prayed with all my might that God would help her walk again, but she got worse. One night after dinner, I went to the basement, where she slept beside the furnace. At the bottom of the stairs, I met Dad. His face was drained of color, and he carried a strange, strong-smelling rag in his hand. I'm sorry, but Queenie's dead, he told me gently. I broke into tears and threw myself in his arms. I don't know how long I sobbed, but after a while I became aware that he was crying too. I remember how pleased I was to learn he felt the same way. Between eye wiping and nose blowing, I told him, I don't ever want another dog. It hurts too much when they die. You're right about the hurt, son, he answered. But that's the price of love. The next day, after conferring with the vet and the family, I reluctantly agreed to have Scampy's legs amputated. If a child's faith can make him well, I remarked to Shirley, then he'll recover 4 times over. And he did, miraculously. If I needed any proof that he was his old self, it came a short time after his operation. Watching from the kitchen window, I saw a fat gray squirrel creep toward the bird feeder. Slowly, the sunning dog pulled himself into attack position. When the squirrel got to within a dozen feet, Scrappy launched himself. Using his hind leg like a pogo stick, he rocketed into the yard and gave one bushy tail the scare of its life. Soon Scampy was back catching balls, tagging along with the kids, running with me as I jogged. The remarkable thing was the way he compensated for his missing appendage. He invented a new stroke for his lone rear leg, moving it piston-like from side to side to achieve both power and stability. His enthusiasm and energy suffered no loss. The best thing about Scampy, a neighbor said, is that he doesn't know he's got a handicap. Either that or he ignores it, which is the best way for all of us to deal with such things. Not that everyone saw him in a positive light. On the playground, some youngsters reacted as if he were a candidate for a Stephen King horror flick. "Look out," shouted one boy. "Here comes Monster Dog." Tripod and Hopalong were other tags. Our kids laughed off his detractors and introduced him as Scampy. I keep calling him Scrappy. They introduced him as Scampy, the greatest three-legged dog in the world. For better than 5 years, Scampy gave us an object lesson in courage, demonstrating what it means to do your best with what you've got. On our daily runs, I often carried out conversations with him as if he understood every word. "I almost shipped you out as a pup," I'd recount to him, "but the kids wouldn't let me. They knew how wonderful you were." It was obvious from the way he studied my face and wagged his tail that he liked to hear how special he was. He probably would have continued to strut his stuff for a lot longer had he been less combative. In scraps in which he was clearly overmatched, he lacked two essentials for longevity: discretion, and partly because of his surgery, an effective reverse gear. One warm August night, he didn't return at his normal time, and the next morning he showed up, gasping for air and bloody around the neck. He obviously had been in a fight, and I suspected a badly damaged windpipe or lung. "Scampy, when will you learn?" I asked as I petted his head. He looked up at me with those trusting eyes and licked my hand, but he was too weak to wag his tail. Christopher and David helped me sponge him down and get him to the vet, but my diagnosis proved too accurate. By midday, the greatest three-legged dog in the world was gone. That evening, Christopher and I drove to the vet's office, gathered up Scampy, and headed home. Scampy's mother, Heidi, had died at 15, just a few months before, and now we would bury him next to her in the woods by the garden. As we drove, I tried to engage Christopher in conversation, but he was silent, apparently sorting through his feelings. "I've seen a lot of dogs, Christopher," I said, "but Scampy was something special." "Yep," he answered, staring into the darkness. "He was certainly one of the smartest." Christopher didn't answer. From flashes of light that passed through the car, I could see him dabbing his eyes. Finally, he looked at me and spoke. "There's only one thing I'm sure of, Dad." He choked out through tears. "I don't want another dog. It feels so bad to lose them." "Yes, I know," I said. Then, drawing on a voice and words that were not my own, I added, "But that's the price of love." Now his sobs were audible, and I was having trouble seeing the road myself. I pulled off at a service station and stopped the car. There, I put my arms around him, and with my tears let him know, just as my father had shown me, that his loss was my loss too. Okay, we're going to read a funny story next. I can't handle all of that right now. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Okay. We're gonna read one that's not so somber. Hopefully this one's a little more lighthearted. Actually, let's do this comic right here. Okay, we'll just read the story. This one is called Darlene. The first duty of love is to listen. For 3 years, my dog Pokey and I worked side by side as volunteers in the prescription pet program at the Children's Hospital in Denver. I often referred to Pokey as a terror instead of a terrier, because in those younger days, she was a perpetual motion machine. The only time she was different was during our hospital visits, and then she seemed to find some inner force that made her behave. Every time that Pokey and I visited patients, we saw little miracles, but one day something special happened that changed my perspective on how deeply Pokey could give. On this day, the volunteer office asked us to see a patient on the 4th floor, the oncology ward. So along the way on our rounds, we made a special point to stop in at Darlene's room. Darlene was 16 years old, with shoulder-length blonde hair and a ready smile. I asked, "Would you like to visit with Pokey?" And she accepted. I immediately knew that something unusual was going on. You see, my ball of fire terrier mix climbed onto the bed and quickly went to the girl's side to tuck in under her arm. Pokey laid her head on the girl's shoulder, with her little dog face pointed up toward Darlene's. As Darlene looked down into those liquid brown eyes, she whispered to Pokey. There was definitely a change from the usual patient contact, where doggy tricks were the order of the day. Still, these two were obviously doing some serious work here, so I sat back and watched the television. After about 30 minutes, Darlene spoke up. "Thanks so much for visiting. I know you have other patients to see, so I'd better let you go. You'll never know how much this meant to me." And she flashed us a brilliant smile. 3 weeks later, I got a phone call from Anne, our supervisor in the volunteer office, with whom I had shared this story. She said, "I just wanted to let you know that Pokey's friend Darlene is in heaven." Darlene, that brave and beautiful 16-year-old child, had received terrible news that day that we visited her. Her cancer had relapsed for a 3rd time. In her treatment protocol, there were no more options. She was destined to die very soon. Darlene had to have been afraid. Still, she couldn't trust her family, friends, doctors, or caregivers with her fears. There wasn't a human alive who she could talk to, but she could share herself with this little dog. She knew that Pokey wouldn't tell any of her secrets, wouldn't ridicule her dreams that would never come true. We'll never truly know what Darlene said that day or just how much good Pokey accomplished with her 30 minutes of loving silence, but Darlene instinctively knew that all dog lovers have known through the ages. No friend can be as trusting, loyal, and loving as a dog. Well, that story was definitely not lighthearted, but it was still a beautiful story. And that is where I'm going to leave off today. Let me know if you would like me to continue reading from this book. I might not be able to do the ones about grieving yet, but I can read other ones. I hope that this video warmed your heart, and if you're going through what I'm going through, I see you, and I understand how painful it is. And you will get through it. You're never going to be fully healed, but you'll be able to see the beauty in knowing your pet and getting to create beautiful memories with them. So I'm gonna go do more crying. And I hope that you have a wonderful night, and I will see you in my next video. Good night.